I used to think I wasn't the paranoid type, but that was before. Ariana and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3, and everything seemed fine. At least, that's what I thought. Life was steady. We weren't exactly rich, but we were comfortable. We had our nice dinners out, the occasional vacation, and lazy Sundays binge-watching shows. It was just life. Nothing extraordinary. Ariana worked in marketing, and I was doing all right as a financial consultant. It wasn't anything glamorous, but it worked. But then, things started to shift a few months ago. It started small, just little changes that, at first, seemed easy to brush off. I mean, nobody wants to be the guy who overthinks everything. She started staying late at work more often, claiming her team couldn't handle things without her. Fair enough, right? Work is work. But it was the way she started acting when she came home that set off alarms. The Ariana I knew would come in, collapse on the couch, and complain about her day. But now, she barely said a word. A quick kiss, like she was just checking something off a list, and then she'd head straight for her phone or the shower, like she couldn't get away fast enough. It felt like she was escaping, not just unwinding. Her behavior around her phone started to change too. Everyone keeps their phone close these days, sure, but Ariana started acting like hers was classified information. She used to leave it lying around without a second thought, but now, it was always face down or tucked away in her bag. And if it buzzed while I was near, she'd grab it so fast. It was like she was hiding something. And then the excuses came. Every time I asked about it, she'd get defensive, acting like I was prying into something I had no business asking about. One night, I suggested we go out for dinner, just the two of us. I figured it had been a while since we'd had any real time together. I said I missed her, hoping she'd catch on. But before I could finish, she shut me down. "I can't, babe. I've got an urgent meeting tonight," she said, tying her hair up in that casual way that used to turn me on. "Ethan dragged things out again. You know how he is." She laughed, but it wasn't the same. Like she was just playing the part. Then she kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her purse, and was out the door before I could even say another word. I just stood there, staring after her, wondering who the hell Ethan even was. She'd mentioned him before, some guy from her team, supposedly harmless, but the way she said his name this time made my skin crawl. I tried to brush it off, though. I didn't want to start jumping to conclusions without any proof. Then a few days later, Jenna, our neighbor from across the hall, knocked on my door. She's the type who seems to know everything before anyone else even says a word. "Hey, Liam, got a second?" she asked with that grin she always wore when she was about to spill something. I leaned against the doorframe, knowing there was no way she was about to drop some light gossip. "I was out with some friends last night," she said, her voice dropping to that tone she uses when she's about to tell you something shady. "I think I saw Ariana. She was at that new Italian place downtown, La Sorella." I frowned. Ariana said she was working late. Jenna raised an eyebrow, making it clear she wasn't buying that. Well, she wasn't alone. She was with some guy. Tall, dark hair, kind of good-looking. They seemed pretty close, Jenna added, her words planting a little seed of doubt in my mind. It wasn't anything definite, but it was enough to make my head spin. I tried to shrug it off, but it stuck with me the rest of the day. That night, I watched Ariana more closely. When I asked her about work, she avoided my gaze. "It's the same old stuff," she muttered, barely glancing up from her phone. It was like I wasn't even there. I wanted to confront her, to tell her what Jenna had said, but it wasn't enough. I needed proof, and that proof came sooner than I expected. One evening, Ariana left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went upstairs to take a shower. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something inside me just snapped. Maybe it was the weird tone when she mentioned Ethan. Maybe it was Jenna's little story. Or maybe I was just tired of being in the dark. I picked up the phone, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might give me away. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just something that would explain why everything felt off. And then I saw it. A text from Ethan, right at the top of her notifications. "You looked amazing. Can't wait for Friday." It hit me like a punch to the gut. My hands started shaking. I stared at the screen, hoping I was reading it wrong, hoping there was some innocent explanation. But deep down, I already knew. I shouldn't have done it, but I opened her photo gallery, And though there were pictures of her and Ethan at some work event, they didn't look like friendly snapshots. They looked close. They were laughing, arms around each other, looking like they were more than just colleagues. She was wearing that red dress, the one she knew I loved but hadn't worn for me in months. The worst part? It was an event I wasn't even invited to. She said it was just for the team, nothing big, nothing I'd enjoy anyway. And yet there she was, hanging all over Ethan like he was the one she couldn't wait to be with. I locked the phone and put it back on the counter, just as I heard the water shut off upstairs. My mind was spinning, a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed time to think. When she came back downstairs, wrapped in a towel, she gave me a quick smile. "What do you want to do for dinner?" she asked, like everything was normal. I looked at her, really looked at her, and all I could see was the woman in those photos. The one who lied to my face, who betrayed me without a second thought. "Not hungry," I muttered, walking past her to the living room. She didn't even ask what was wrong. And that was the moment I knew. The Ariana I married, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who could lie to me without a second thought and walk away like nothing happened. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I had to figure out what to do next. One thing was for sure, though. I wasn't going to let this slide. The moment I saw those pictures, everything inside me shattered. My heart wasn't just broken. It felt like it was obliterated. I stumbled into the bathroom, locked the door behind me, and sat down on the cold tile floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe properly. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the fact that she came home from being with him, from Ethan, acting like everything was fine. She had destroyed everything. Our marriage, ruined. For what? A fling with some guy she'd insisted was just a friend. I slammed my fist into the floor. The sharp pain in my hand almost felt like it was grounding me in reality. I stared at the wall, my mind racing through 1,000 thoughts. But the real gut punch wasn't the pictures. It was her. How she had turned into someone so cold, so distant. How did we end up here? I had sensed it. I knew the distance was growing between us, but I convinced myself it was just a phase. That work had her stressed out, that things would settle down. But no. Now I saw it all clearly. She wasn't just slipping away. She was already with him. Ethan. And I had been too damn blind to notice. I heard her moving around outside the bathroom, probably getting ready for bed like nothing had changed. Just the thought of it made my blood boil. How could she look me in the eyes, lie straight to my face, and then crawl into our bed like everything was fine? I clenched my jaw, the pain in my teeth a small distraction from the rage I was feeling. She didn't know that I knew, yet. That was the only thing I had going for me. The next day, I reached out to Tyler. Tyler had been my friend since childhood. He was one of the few people in my life I trusted completely. I texted him, asking if he was free to grab a drink, and in less than an hour, we were sitting in a dark, hole-in-the-wall bar downtown. Tyler looked at me long and hard as I downed my second shot. "What's going on?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. I laid it all out for him. The late nights, the strange phone behavior, the photos, the messages from Ethan. Saying it all out loud made the anger feel like it was about to spill over. It made everything so real, and I hated it. When I finished, Tyler just stared at me, shaking his head. "Man, that's rough. I don't even know what to say." I laughed, but it was bitter, empty. "Yeah, welcome to the club." Tyler was serious now, lowering his voice. "You gotta leave her, Liam. She's not worth it. If she's doing this to you now, she'll keep doing it. Cut your losses, file for divorce, and get out of there." I knew he was right. I knew it. But leaving her? That felt like losing. It didn't feel like enough. After everything she'd done to me, I wanted her to feel it. To hurt the way I was hurting. "No," I said slowly, shaking my head. "Not yet. I'm not walking away from this." Tyler raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. "What are you thinking?" "I'm gonna make her feel everything. The same humiliation she put me through." I muttered more to myself than to him. He looked at me like I was losing it. "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned in close and whispered, "Sophie Bennett." Tyler stared at me, his mouth hanging open, Sophie? Are you serious? Dude, Ariana can't stand her. Exactly, I said, the words coming out darker than I expected. Sophie had always been the wedge between me and Ariana. She had been Ariana's best friend for years, but something always clicked between Sophie and me. Nothing ever happened. Not physically, anyway. But Ariana always knew there was something between us. Sophie had this way of flirting, of being playful and teasing, and it drove Ariana nuts. We fought about Sophie more than anything else, even though nothing had crossed the line. But now I was going to cross it, and I knew it would drive Ariana crazy. You know Sophie always had a thing for you, Tyler said, shaking his head with a grin. This is gonna be messy. Good, I said, my voice dark and cold. She deserves messy. Tyler gave me a doubtful look, but didn't push it. Just be careful, man. This never ends well. That night, after I got back from the bar, I lay in bed next to Ariana. She was asleep, peaceful, while I stared at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Part of me wanted to wake her up, throw the pictures in her face, and demand answers. But what was the point? There were no answers that would make this right. Nothing she could say would fix what she'd done. So, I started planning. I knew exactly what I was going to do. Sophie had made it clear for years that she had feelings for me. Nothing overt, just little things, comments, touches, that look she always gave me when Ariana wasn't around. Ariana hated it, and I always shot Sophie down. But now I was done playing the nice guy. I pulled out my phone and opened Sophie's contact. I hesitated. This wasn't me. I wasn't the kind of guy who used people to get back at others. But Ariana had changed me. She turned me into someone I didn't recognize, and if this was what I had to become to make her feel the way I did, then so be it. I typed the message, "Hey, it's been a while. We should catch up sometime." I stared at the screen for a moment, my thumb hovering over the send button. Then, without thinking, I hit send. The message was delivered immediately. I knew Sophie would respond. She always did. And when she did, Ariana would regret ever crossing me. Sophie replied within the hour. Of course, she did. She always responded fast, especially when it came to me. "Hey, stranger. Long time indeed. I'd love to catch up over coffee sometime." I smirked at the screen. It was almost too easy. Sophie had always been a little too interested in me, and Ariana had always hated it. But I'd brushed it off. Now I was about to take the bait, just like Ariana had always feared. We met at a cozy coffee shop downtown, the kind with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. I spotted Sophie first, long blonde hair, tight jeans, and a low-cut blouse. She was obvious, and she knew it. "Liam," she called out, her face lighting up when she saw me. She gave me a hug, just a little too long. Her perfume, sweet with a hint of musk, filled the air. "Sophie?" I said with a smile. "You look amazing." She laughed, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Stop it. You haven't changed a bit." The conversation flowed easily. I kept it light, talking about old memories, jokes, anything to keep it casual. But Sophie, she was leaning in just a little too close, touching my arm every chance she got. I let her. In fact, I started giving as good as I got, complimenting her laugh, her smile, the way she still had that spark, and she soaked it all up. We stayed for over an hour, and by the time we left, that spark had turned into something much bigger. Sophie gave me one last hug, her lips brushing my cheek as she whispered, "We should do this again soon." As I walked back to my car, I knew she was hooked. The game had begun. A few days later, I sent Sophie a simple text, "How about dinner? My treat. I know a place I think you'll really like." She responded almost instantly, no hesitation. That's when I realized I had her exactly where I wanted her. Ariana's best friend was practically begging for my attention, and I was more than willing to give it to her, for now. We agreed to meet at a fancy restaurant, the kind where the lighting is soft and the wine list is ridiculously long. Sophie showed up a little late, wearing a tight black dress that hugged every curve of her body. "You clean up well," I said, keeping my tone casual. She flashed me a grin. "You don't look so bad yourself." The dinner felt like a slow, drawn-out game. Sophie's flirting was no longer playful. It was calculated. She leaned in close as she spoke, her hand brushing mine as she reached for her wine glass. I didn't pull away. Instead, I mirrored her every move, locking eyes, flashing a smile at just the right moment. It was all about building that tension, letting the anticipation grow with each passing second. Halfway through the meal, Sophie leaned forward, her voice soft and intimate. You know, Liam, I've always had a thing for you. I pretended to be shocked. Really? I didn't know that. She smirked, her eyes sparkling. Oh, come on. You had to have known. Ariana never treated you the way you deserve. I always thought she took you for granted. I sipped my wine slowly, letting her words sink in. You might be right about that. Sophie smiled and placed her hand over mine. I mean it, Liam. You're incredible. Any woman would be lucky to have you. I let out a soft, bitter chuckle. If only you'd told me that sooner. Her eyes widened just a little, and I could see that spark of hope in them. The kind of hope that makes people do things they normally wouldn't. Meanwhile, back home, Ariana was starting to sense something was off. I could tell by the way she started watching me more carefully, asking about my day, trying to dig into my life. One night, she said, "You've been acting different lately." Her voice was cautious. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine, I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. Why wouldn't it be? She furrowed her brow. I don't know. You just seem a little distant. I shrugged, offering the most believable excuse I could. Maybe I'm just tired. It was a weak excuse, but it worked. For now, I wasn't ready for a confrontation. Not yet. I needed to keep things quiet while I set everything in motion. The more I pulled away, the more Ariana became suspicious. I could see it in the way she started asking me more pointed questions. Where were you tonight? She asked one evening as I came home later than usual. I was with Tyler, I said smoothly. You know how he is. One beer turns into 5. She didn't seem convinced, but there wasn't much she could say. After all, she was the one sneaking around with Ethan. If she wanted to accuse me of anything, she'd have to confront her own guilt first. I made sure to leave things vague enough to keep her guessing. Not enough to give her something concrete to hold on to, just enough to make her wonder. It was a delicate game, but I was getting good at it. I was making her feel what I had felt, confused, suspicious, and constantly questioning everything. Every time I saw her glance at her phone or furrow her brow when I gave her an evasive answer, I felt a dark satisfaction. It wasn't enough to win yet, but it was a start. As for Sophie, she was fully invested. The dinner had gone perfectly, and by the end of the night, it was clear she was ready for more. She kissed me on the cheek as we said goodbye, her lips lingering just a little too long. Call me, she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. I smiled and replied, you can count on it. As I drove home that night, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Ariana had no idea what was coming, and Sophie was falling deeper into my trap with each passing moment. The stage was set. I just had to play my part and wait for the perfect moment to watch it all come crashing down. When our wedding anniversary came around, I realized it had arrived much quicker than I expected. It was supposed to be a day to celebrate love, right? 5 years together, 3 of those married. But instead of celebrating, I was planning an elaborate spectacle of betrayal and humiliation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ariana had no clue what was about to happen. She'd made her choice with Ethan, and tonight, she was going to see just how badly she had messed up. I went all out. I booked a countryside villa, an enormous estate with ivy-covered walls, chandeliers, and a garden that looked like something straight out of a fairy tale. We invited everyone, friends, colleagues, neighbors, and of course Ethan. I made sure he got an invite. This wasn't just about hurting Ariana. It was about making sure she had an audience when everything came crashing down. That morning, Ariana seemed genuinely excited. It was the most animated I'd seen her in months, which only made me angrier. Her excitement wasn't for me. It was for the show she was putting on for everyone else. She floated around the house, humming to herself as she got ready, completely unaware of what I had in store. By the time the evening rolled around, the villa was packed with guests. I greeted everyone with a smile, playing the part of the perfect husband. Ariana looked radiant in her dress. The same damn red dress she had worn with Ethan. I couldn't decide if she wore it out of guilt or because she thought it made her look good, but either way, it only fueled my determination. Throughout the night, I stayed close to her, my hand on the small of her back, whispering sweet words in her ear. She beamed at our friends, soaking up every compliment about how lucky we were, how perfect our relationship seemed. I nodded along, gritting my teeth through every word I wanted to say. If only they knew Sophie was there too, looking stunning and dangerous in a sleek black dress. I caught her smirking at me from across the room and gave her a subtle nod. She knew exactly what to do. She knew her role. Ethan, as expected, showed up fashionably late, just as I'd planned. I was deep in conversation with some of Ariana's co-workers when I saw her freeze for a second. Her eyes flickered toward the door. There he was, walking in like he owned the place, wearing that smug smile I'd seen in the pictures. The change in Ariana was instantaneous. Her whole body seemed to come alive. She smiled, a real, genuine smile, in a way I hadn't seen in months. It was like watching someone wake up from a long sleep. That was all the confirmation I needed. I'd wondered if I had imagined their connection, if I'd been overreacting. But seeing the way she looked at him, I knew for sure. I clenched my jaw but forced myself to stay calm. No explosions, no confrontations. Not yet. There was a plan, and I was going to follow it. I made sure to give Ethan a warm, almost friendly welcome, clapping him on the back and handing him a drink as if we were old friends. Ariana watched us from a distance, her smile tight, eyes flicking back and forth nervously. She had no idea just how much I knew. As the night wore on and the crowd began to thin, I quietly slipped away from the party. Ariana noticed immediately. I could feel her eyes tracking me as I excused myself, slipping up the grand staircase toward the second floor. That was the signal. I knew she'd come looking for me soon enough, but by the time she did, it would be too late. Sophie was already in the room, casually leaning against the bedpost with that same confident, knowing smile on her face. "You sure about this?" she asked, though we both knew she wasn't about to stop me. "More than sure," I muttered, closing the door behind me with a quiet click. Sophie didn't need any more convincing. Minutes later, we were tangled up in the sheets, her hands everywhere, her breath hot and fast against my skin. It was chaotic, nothing like anything I'd ever shared with Ariana. But this wasn't about the act itself. It was about something much bigger. The reckoning I had been planning for months was finally about to arrive. And just like clockwork, the door swung open. Ariana stood there in the doorway, frozen. Her face was a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and devastation. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Sophie, totally unaffected, sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around herself like it was her victory flag. "Well," Sophie said with a grin, "I guess you finally understand what it feels like to be betrayed." I watched Ariana, waiting for the explosion, the shouting, the crying. But nothing happened. She just stood there, frozen. Her face had gone pale, her knuckles white as she gripped the doorframe. I could see her processing it all, realizing not just that I had caught her, but that I had gone further. I had humiliated her in front of Sophie, the one person she hated more than anyone else. "You," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You son of a bitch." I sat up, calm and collected, offering her the same smile she'd once given me when she thought I didn't know. "Now we're even, Ariana." Her face twisted with rage, her chest rising and falling with every breath. I watched her, my own anger dissipating. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment she finally understood what it felt like to have everything fall apart. Downstairs, I could hear the faint sounds of the party continuing, oblivious to what was happening upstairs. But I knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Ariana would run back down to the crowd, and soon enough, the truth would spill out. Whispers would spread, and the humiliation would settle in, just like it had for me. Ariana backed away from the doorway, her eyes never leaving mine. "You're disgusting," she spat, her voice venomous. I shrugged, my expression blank. Takes one to know one. Without another word, she was gone, slamming the door behind her with such force that it rattled the frame. Sophie chuckled softly beside me. Lighting a cigarette like this was just another ordinary moment. Well, that was fun, she said, exhaling smoke toward the ceiling. I didn't respond. I just lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and music from downstairs. The plan had gone exactly as I'd hoped. I had my revenge, but as I lay there, I realized something was missing. The satisfaction I had imagined didn't come. All I felt was an emptiness where the anger had been. I had one, sure, but what did I really gain? Ariana had stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide, her lips parted as if she couldn't breathe. I could see the shock in her face, the utter disbelief as the lies crumbled around her. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry, but nothing came out. She glanced at me, then at Sophie, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the nightmare unfolding in front of her. Sophie, completely unbothered, slid off the bed like she was in no rush. She moved slowly, savoring the moment, then wrapped a silk robe around herself as if she'd won some grand prize. Well, Sophie said, her voice dripping with satisfaction, now you know what it feels like to lose trust. Ariana's face crumpled for a moment, and I thought she might collapse right there. But she didn't. Instead, her eyes locked onto Sophie with a fury I could practically feel. You, she whispered, her voice breaking. You're disgusting. Sophie just laughed, a short, cruel sound that filled the room. Don't act surprised, Ariana. We both knew you had this coming. Ariana's grip on the doorframe tightened. Her knuckles were white, and I thought she might snap. But instead, she turned and stormed out, slamming the door with enough force to shake the house. The sound echoed through the halls, and I knew it wouldn't be long before the whispers started downstairs. Sophie sat on the edge of the bed, lighting another cigarette with that same smug grin on her face. Well, that went better than I expected, she said. I stayed silent, lying back, feeling oddly empty. The satisfaction I had expected just wasn't there. I had imagined this moment for weeks, thought it would feel like victory, the sweet taste of revenge. But now, I just felt numb. It didn't take long for the fallout to start. The murmurs from downstairs grew louder. Whispers, questions, people piecing things together. Someone must have seen Ariana leave the room, disheveled and red-eyed. In a crowd like this, nothing stays hidden for long. Sophie leaned over and smirked. You know, it's only a matter of time before everyone knows what really went down, right? I nodded slowly. That's the point. Because Ariana wasn't just going to lose me. She was going to lose everything. Her friends, her dignity, her carefully constructed image. By the time we made our way downstairs, the whispers had turned into full conversations. People were glancing at us, some with curiosity, others with amusement. It didn't take long for the truth to spread like wildfire. Ariana's affair with Ethan, my revenge with Sophie. It was all out in the open now, and there was no going back. Sophie, always one for theatrics, didn't waste a moment. As soon as Ariana reappeared, still looking disheveled and clearly upset, Sophie stepped forward. All smiles, but with a layer of venom in her voice. Ariana, she said sweetly, though it was clear she was enjoying every second. I think it's time we clear the air, don't you? Ariana's eyes locked onto her, her jaw clenched. You're not doing this here. Oh, but I think I am, Sophie replied with a smile that could have cut glass. Sophie's smile spread wider, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. You betrayed me. You betrayed Liam. Hell, you even betrayed yourself. And now everyone here deserves to know the truth about who you really are. The room went completely silent. Ariana looked like she wanted to disappear, but Sophie wasn't letting up. Her words were sharp, cruel. Let's get real, Ariana. You threw away your marriage for some pathetic loser who can't even show up on time. Sophie tilted her head mockingly, her voice dripping with disdain. What was the plan, huh? Were you just going to keep sneaking around with Ethan until Liam figured it out? Or did you honestly think you could get away with this forever? Ariana's eyes scanned the room desperately, searching for any sign of sympathy. But the faces staring back at her were cold, hard, full of judgment. There was no one left on her side. She was completely alone. Sophie turned to face the crowd, addressing them like an executioner delivering the final blow. "I'm done pretending to be friends with a backstabbing liar," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "So, Ariana, consider our friendship over." Ariana's face crumbled, her mouth opening to say something, but no sound came out. Sophie didn't wait for a response. With a final, victorious smirk, she turned and walked away, leaving Ariana standing there, exposed, humiliated, completely alone in the middle of the room. The social network Ariana had spent years carefully building began to disintegrate right in front of her. It was like watching a fragile house of cards collapse, one piece after another. People whispered behind her back, their smiles tight and insincere. Friends she had trusted and relied on started distancing themselves, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. As for Ethan, he vanished the second the situation turned messy. I knew he'd bail. He always would. By the time Ariana's world started to implode, he was already backing off, scrambling to protect his own reputation. Rumors started circulating at her workplace as well. Ariana had once been the rising star, admired by everyone, but now? Now she was the woman who threw away her marriage for a fling with a colleague. The whispers followed her everywhere, into meetings, into every conversation she had. Her once spotless professional reputation was now nothing but a smudge. At first, she tried to explain herself, tried to justify what had happened. But no one wanted to hear it. Without Ethan by her side, offering support, Ariana was left with nothing. No one to defend her, no one to lean on. I watched it all unfold, and for a while, it felt good. Watching her unravel, piece by piece, made it feel like justice had finally been served. It was the kind of satisfaction I'd imagined for months. But after a while, that feeling started to fade. The anger, the fury that had driven me to this point, began to lose its grip on me. What I had thought would be a permanent feeling of vindication started to slip away, leaving behind a hollow ache. I had won the war, but at what cost? Ariana was a wreck, isolated, humiliated, abandoned. And I wasn't any better. In destroying her, I had destroyed something of myself, too. At first, the sight of her world crumbling gave me a strange, grim satisfaction. It felt like a kind of justice. But as the days passed, the satisfaction turned to something else, something deeper and harder to ignore. I realized that in all my anger, in all my plans, I had lost something I hadn't expected to. I started to find myself thinking about the good times, the moments before everything fell apart, back when we were happy, or at least when I thought we were. Those mornings when we stayed in bed late, the sound of her laughter filling the room, the excitement of new dates. The way she used to look at me, like I was the most important person in the world. No matter how much I tried to push those memories away, they came rushing back, uninvited and unwanted. And the more they surfaced, the more I realized how much I missed what we had. One night, Tyler called. He had been my biggest cheerleader, always reminding me that Ariana deserved what she got. "What's up, man? Meet me at the bar. One more night to celebrate. You earned it." I went, hoping the noise, the chaos, and the alcohol would drown out the emptiness creeping in. The bar was packed, people shouting over the music, laughter echoing around us. Tyler slapped me on the back, ordering shots like we were celebrating a new job, not the end of a marriage. "To freedom," he shouted, raising his glass. "To being done with that cheating bitch." I forced a smile, clinking glasses with him, then threw back the shot. The burn of the alcohol didn't bring the relief I was looking for. The victory I thought I'd feel didn't come. Instead, there was an odd emptiness, a sense of being disconnected from everything. Tyler kept talking, but his words became background noise. I sat there, nursing my drink, feeling more lost than I'd ever felt. At some point, Tyler leaned in, grinning. "What's wrong with you, man? You should be on top of the world right now." I shrugged, swirling the whiskey in my glass. "I don't know, Tyler. It doesn't feel the way I thought it would." Tyler looked at me like I was crazy. "But Liam, you got what you wanted. You've got your revenge. You're free now." Free? The word didn't even sound right. Sure, Ariana was out of my life. Her lies exposed. Her reputation ruined. But instead of feeling free, I felt empty. Somewhere along the way, in all the scheming and rage, I had lost something important, more than just her. I had lost myself. After another drink, I excused myself and left Tyler at the bar. I drove home through the quiet, dark streets, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The house was unnervingly silent when I walked in. I kicked off my shoes, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat down in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of my past. I found myself scrolling through old photos, vacations, birthdays, random candid shots from nights spent laughing together. One photo caught my attention. Our first anniversary, sitting on the beach, smiling like everything was perfect. I remembered how happy I was that day, how sure I was that she was the person I would spend the rest of my life with. Now, I wasn't so sure about anything anymore. I stared at the photos, feeling the weight of everything I had lost. Not just Ariana, but the person I used to be, the man who believed in love, who thought trust was unbreakable, the man who wanted nothing more than to make his wife happy. That man was gone. In his place was someone bitter, hollow, and exhausted. The silence of the house pressed in on me. I took a long drink of my beer and leaned back on the couch, letting the memories flood over me. Revenge was supposed to bring peace. That's what I told myself. If I could just make her feel the way I felt, betrayed, humiliated, then everything would be okay. But the truth was, revenge hadn't healed anything. It had just replaced one kind of pain with a deeper one. Ariana was gone, her life in ruins. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt empty. I sat there for hours, the faint glow of the TV the only light in the room. The beer grew warm in my hand as I aimlessly scrolled through old photos. And in that moment, I realized there would be no closure, no neat ending, just a broken marriage, shattered trust, and the harsh reality that some wounds don't heal. They just linger, like scars. I had one, but the victory was hollow. Peace remained out of reach. And the man I used to be, the one who believed in love, was gone for good. All that was left was the silence, the echo of old memories, and me, sitting alone in the wreckage of a life I thought I understood.